what is this version today? This is the tired version. It's
I was being like the Addams Family and doing the
Wednesday.
Oh shit.
I feel like it's
let it loose, Jenny.
I feel like it's the bluesy version. It's Wednesday and long-winded. Hey, it's long-winded Wednesday. Hey, what's up? What's up? What's up? My name is Jenny Medrano. I am the Shift Program Manager at Building Bridges. I use she, her, and hers pronouns, and currently my eyes are barely functioning because of screens.
Hi, my name is Marin. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the shift coordinator. That's all I got.
Okay.
I was trying not to burp. I just had a LaCroix. I have a little tangerine burp trying to come out.
So you are gonna catch a real in-time live conversation. This is like the first conversation Marin and I have had today, even though we live together.
It's legit.
We've been doing things, keeping this program rolling. This is basically has been like a startup, y'all. Like it's just sometimes I feel like people think, oh yeah, Building Bridges, y'all must have like 20 people on staff. Actually, we only have 5 full-time staff and 3 interns, which is more than we've ever had. We have contract facilitators, which are around 8 to 10. But in the day-to-day shift things, it's mostly if she's not doing it and I'm not doing it, it's not getting done.
One's doing it.
It's
us. Shift is us. It's just the two of us, which is great and also really hard some days.
Yes. So I feel really grateful to have our other team members. Like Kamita was on last week. She's working hard with communications and just overall development within Building Bridges. Then we have people like Amanda, who is contracting with us. They're helping us keep this ship afloat, co-facilitating with us. And hopefully we'll expand our team soon. But thanks for bearing with us as we're late every single time. But that's why, because we're trying to do all the things. I made an egg.
Actually, no, I had to change from my workout clothes to the actual clothes.
Well, we both have to put on our uniform, which we didn't plan, which is a black shirt and blue blocking glasses.
And we got our pants aren't.
They're the
We're
same.
Still like
look,
fall.
It's the same fall vibe of brown
Yes.
and maroon.
Yes. I copied you. I totally did.
Anyways, so let's take a deep breath because I need one.
Okay.
We do this thing at Building Bridges where we breathe in through our stomach. Marin showed me first. In through the stomach, then in through the chest, then exhale.
Ooh,
and I've been I do it every time at our BIPOC sessions because I've learned how much racial vata fatigue is stored in our stomachs. So I always say like, hey, we're doing this intentionally because we don't want ulcers and all that business. So let's really breathe into
that
it.
energy. So
let's do 3 deep breaths. If you are watching, feel free to join us. We're going to breathe in, expand the stomach, then the chest, and then exhale. First one, in through the stomach, into the chest, exhale. Next one, in through the stomach, into the chest, exhale. Last one, in through the stomach, into the chest.
I had a meditation this morning where it was like smile and then smile even more and then breathe into your smile. And then you're supposed to yawn like a lion or a cat and like stick your tongue out. Those are 2 new ones I'm going to pull out later, just FYI.
Have fun in Marin sessions. And then, yeah, I've done a smiling meditation where it is like you smile subtly and then you let the smile enter each part of your body. That one was interesting. Ooh. I liked it. I felt joyful. Okay, y'all. So today the topic is, let me just see if we're up and good to go. The topic up today is politics.
Ooh.
And what is
code word?
Our relationship with politics? How has that been influenced by culture? I've been on a culture kick lately because most of our sessions that we've been doing with clients and a lot of people have been around cultural intelligence and just noticing, identifying cultural biases and values that we have and how our upbringing has shaped the way we think today. So I've been like, hey, I want to talk about this because I always have to facilitate it, but I don't get to talk about culture. So when we say culture too, we're not just talking about racial or ethnic identity. People have the assumption that that's what we're meaning, but I'm talking about what state you grew up in, how that affected things, what your family culture is, how that affected things. Were you in a debate club? Did that affect things? Like all the things. So when I say politics, what do you think, Lauren? What words come to mind?
To me, it feels like in my state now as Marin, 38-year-old Marin in this moment in October 2020, usually that word is used where folks, especially like more specifically where white folks are like, let's not get political, or let's not bring it to politics. Or thinking back to my teacher days or even my teacher friends right now, still really combating, well, teaching can't be political.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a misunderstanding or a disconnect, which makes complete sense, which is part of white supremacy culture, whiteness in general, of like being unaware of what politics actually means, or that it is just this thing that you can talk about every once in a while versus it legitimately affecting your life, your body, your experience day in and day out.
Let's talk more about that phrase. Like, I don't mean to get too political here. Like, I feel like the word politics is so coded. Mm-hmm. When I've heard people say, I don't mean to get too political here, a lot of times what they mean by politics is like what I believe is justice or social impact. Yeah. It's very simple. We're working to address the way people are oppressed, but somehow in naming racism, sexism, transphobia, whatever, like any of the things we talk about at Building Bridges, basically, a lot of people think that that's politics.
Too political.
I don't get that. Mm-mm. I don't agree. To me, I feel like politics, what in my head is the government system. And I guess like political candidates and such. Is that what you think politics is?
Yeah, I mean, that's a piece of it. There's this weird, there's this weird system that I still have to, or can choose to play in or participate in. Yes, I do agree that that's maybe another frame of it, or another like layer of it.
Yeah.
And it's like very real right now too. I think there's a lot of folks who are feeling anxious about the election, or feeling some sort of way around the election, some sort of way about what's happening yesterday in terms of the Supreme Court justice. So yeah, there are these systems, these things that exist that affect me, you, us as people, that like, it feels so far away sometimes too.
It does. And one of the things I've been thinking about is how much has my perspective or value on politics, or even like, I don't feel as strongly or passionately that our votes matter as much as others do. I'm noticing. And I'm curious about that, because I'm like, is that because of my education or lack thereof of how the government system works. And that's something that I've talked a lot with my friend Seitu, because we both are like, how does it actually work? And does a popular vote matter that much and all that? So I'm like, is it because of that, or is it because of the fact that my family didn't really raise me with a strong value on politics or voting? Like, I know my parents always voted, but they never talked about it or like made a big deal. I feel like it was just a thing that was done.
And now there's parents on TikTok yelling at their 18-year-olds. Go vote! Yeah. I've seen a couple videos of it at least.
And I could think back and be like, was that because it wasn't as big of a deal with Clinton and Obama and like Bush and all these people? Or was that because I just wasn't paying attention because I was a kid? I don't really know. What was it like in your house growing up around voting season?
I feel like it was always a thing. I feel like there was an element of like going to the dentist and getting a prize. You go to vote and you get a sticker. Like that real like
your excitement.
That real like star sticker affirmation thing that white folks like that's very real.
Check, you did a good job.
You did something good. Oh geez. I'm trying to think. I don't think I have voted in every election. I know I have in at least the last 3, maybe not earlier in my 20s. I think for me, I got my ballot in the mail this week and I did do a little excited dance. And one, it's because my ballot comes in the mail. I think to me, just knowing about voter suppression and people worried about astrology and Mercury retrograde coming into the election, and just like, what is it to even be able to access and get your vote in? So the fact that it just showed up at my door feels pretty exciting. And I want to get it done sooner than later. But yeah, I feel like I remember my parents going. I was definitely really in my white ladiness around voting for Hillary Clinton and really convinced that that was going to happen instead of Donald Trump. And that was definitely a huge moment of learning when he was. Yeah, and I guess I'm thinking of those statistics as well in terms of just my demographic of white women and what is it that I, just really feeling that the least I can do on top of the work that I do here with Building Bridges is to get my vote in.
I think that part of what influenced my lack of excitement around voting or value on it is just seeing the complexities of the role that the government has played in my family. It's just like, I don't really view the government as something that is going to help me.
Sure.
So, and I have been so privileged to be born in the US, but I think there was always an element of like, in family gatherings, like, well, not all of us are citizens, so let's not talk about that. We never talked about being a citizen or like what that even means. And it varied from my mom's side to my dad's side, but I remember growing up with cousins who weren't citizens and just having that be a constant reminder. So sometimes I wonder, like, what are other people who are undocumented or have family members that are undocumented feeling right now? Yeah.
What emotions come up?
I feel a little guilty in my own privilege around being a citizen. And I feel sad, like, I'm always sad for the people that are missed.
Yeah.
And I just feel like they keep getting missed.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why is that? Is that because people it's like the whole isms thing. Like some isms really matter in society and hold a lot of weight, like racism and sexism right now, and some not so much, like nationalism or xenophobia. It feels that way. I don't know if that's accurate.
Yeah, you saying that too definitely again like reminds me of the learning that I had around Donald Trump being initially elected. I was still a teacher, and I woke up that morning to my friend calling me and us being in tears, and I went to school that morning and I was crying in the parking lot before I went into school because I was very distraught and in emotions and how am I going to face my kiddos. And my Black woman principal saw me in the car, and she came over and was kind of just like, you know, like, yep, brush your eye. Like, we got to go show up for these kiddos. And then more conversation later too of her just, she wasn't surprised as a woman of color. Like there's an element of folks of color. We've done this before. Like we've lived through Bush. We've lived through all these other presidents who've never actually ever been for the marginalized, for folks of color, even if they say that they are. And so, yeah, that kind of, I think that same sentiment of like, and what you posted even recently too, like, we're going to be here the next day and the day after and the week after the election. And so like, what is it to just truly continue to be in it versus be wrapped up in this one thing that happens?
And I feel like when after the election takes place, it's going to be like a reset moment, no matter what happens, of people being like, either if Biden gets elected, it's like, okay, like, let's get our shit together. There's a lot of cleanup. And then if Trump gets reelected, it's going to be like, oh my God, 4 more years of this. How do we like put it even the pedal to the metal even more when it comes to white supremacy and dismantling that? I guess I'm just feeling that more and more. And I'm now looking back on when Trump got elected, it feels like and I normally don't really harp on Trump because I'm tired of that rhetoric and I have other things to say, but it feels like he is just a clown hyperbole of everyone else. Like he's just as bad as everyone else, like especially other presidents, like you mentioned.
Yep.
Just as arrogant, just as xenophobic, racist, classist, all the things. Yep. It's just he's been on TV and he's an idiot. So it's like even more in the forefront.
Yeah. No, and that's, I think maybe what I'm wondering too, of like your thought around it too. One is like, because yeah, the popular vote actually doesn't work. Like that's the way that this whole thing is set up is really conflated and weird in terms of how, and it hasn't been changed since the inception of the election like process. And so the process doesn't work. I agree that it should be, and I think it should be the popular vote, but that doesn't count. And shoot, I lost the train of thought that I was going towards.
Whoa.
Dang it.
Sounds like it's gonna be a good thing too.
It was going somewhere. I lost my train. Dang it.
Well, back to the Trump thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it'll
come back. It'll come back, y'all.
I feel like I don't even know. I could talk on and on about just how much I feel like people are spending their energy on useless things.
Yep.
And one of them is just, at this point, like we've had 4 years of this. Like if someone's still a Trump supporter, if you're out there supporting Trump after all he's done, I'm not trying to change your mind. Like you're clearly
in your willful ignorance
on board with pretty much everything I'm against and actively working against. And I feel like luckily, like there's pretty much not a lot of people left on my feeds or media or anything because I've either blocked them or unfollowed them or whatever. Because I don't have time for that noise. But it's like I think I get frustrated when I see so many of my friends and family and people just, it's like you're doing the little old-fashioned Basque of to light a fire, to just keep it going. Like, isn't he the worst? Like, duh, he's the worst. Like, fucking join us at this other stuff that we're doing that's already trying to work against it versus adding to the whole hype of it. It's like you're making yourself sick, probably.
I feel like it comes back to just, it feels like a theme in one of our first and only podcasts we did with each other was
we'll get
about,
back to it one day.
Was about disbelief.
It was.
And I there is an element of that. I feel tired around that there, especially white folks in my life, that the more and more whatever happens, that it is just this disbelief and this continued kind of maybe feeling like hopeless, and that one of the only things that can be done is to vote, and not again seeing the day in and the day out and the true work that needs to be done. And
that's where I think sometimes I feel a huge amount of sense of urgency in our work, because I'm like, people are getting this. I have the feeling that people are gonna experience even more this year how that's powerlessness because of the election. I don't know what that means, but I just had it in my body that's going to happen. And then what does that mean? Well, we better make space on this ship for like thousands and thousands more, right? And not that we're the only ones doing this kind of work. I know there's lots of people. There aren't a lot of people that I've met that are doing it as collaboratively as we're trying to do it with as many people. I see a lot of independent consultants, see a lot of like 2-person teams or 3-person teams. I see a lot of trainings where it's focusing on maybe systemic racism alone without an emphasis on intersectionality. And so this sounds kind of arrogant, like we're doing the best, but I just believe that we're doing everything that we can to create something that actually helps, because we've been scratching our heads. I've been in this work for 7 years trying to figure out, how do I make this easier to understand so people can get it more quickly, so we don't have time to waste. I don't have years and years to try to bring you in. And luckily the collective is opening up this space of learning that's never existed before, in terms of how many people want to learn and become anti-racist. Not that I've seen, it hasn't existed.
And I feel like in one of the just last white affinity spaces, or maybe it was Uprooted, there was someone who mentioned just the frustration that the work that they're doing and the work that we were doing and are doing in our communities and at Building Bridges isn't necessarily, we're not going to see effects of that really in our living lifetime or in that person's lifetime. And that real kind of disappointment, but also like necessity for some grit to just like, but I'm going to do it anyway for the whatever, the rest of my life that I do have, in order to think ahead of future ancestors, future generations, of how I show up now is going to be the start of a ripple effect that I can just hope that it will mean something down the road. And that's really like existential, and like not everyone can just live with that and be okay with that.
I hadn't thought about that. Like that. That makes me think of the historical narrative and context of the US. And not to equate all these different historical events, but if we think about, abolishing slavery alongside of the genocide of indigenous people, and alongside, the Mexican-American War and the colonization that happened of Mexico, I can think about moments in which there were people like you and me who were like, I don't think this is good. Like I vote no. Like this is actually going against my body. This is inhumane. We shouldn't be doing this. How is this even a thing? And they were probably like, will that even matter? But it's like now years and years beyond, as much as everything is still so shitty, like we have actual discussion around reparations. We have reservations that do exist. We have, you know, new opportunities for Mexican Americans that I've seen that I'm sure my ancestors never thought possible. So I'm just reflecting on that and just like how people like us were existing hundreds of years ago, just being like, let's have a training about why people shouldn't be enslaved. Damn. So then what does that mean hundreds of years from now? What the US could look like, or if it exists still, what the world could look like.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what we've learned and also experienced and believe in terms of Reese Dominican's work, and just like, what is it to also, like, the work is to be embodied, the work is to do the work in your body, to be a calm body, to process all of this, and therefore be able to, what we believe in is be in the long haul of this, of to be able to navigate the nuance, the tension, the confusion, the 5 steps forward, 20 steps back, then maybe a couple steps forward. Like, there's just, yeah, I appreciate being able to think about past the 2nd of November, because I think, yeah, that's what we're trying to do here.
And I think like what we do on a day-to-day basis in terms of our trainings is in essence so simple. And it really, really does take a skilled facilitator to do the work we do. The more we can train up people to be skilled facilitators who can act on their intuition, who can ask really good questions, who are so grounded in themselves that they can handle opinions, perspectives that are different from theirs and navigate that and know how to navigate their own triggers. The more we could do that, the more we could push our work forward. Because in the end, we're just creating space for people to work through their shit. And that was a reminder to me yesterday when we had someone at one of our facilitation trainings tell us, I came here thinking, like, it was a compliment, but I think it was kind of worded weird, but she was like, I came here thinking I was going to get all this knowledge and new expertise on facilitation, when really, like, how did she say it?
Oh, I watched you pull all the wisdom out of the group.
Yeah. So it ended up being like this really nice affirmation, but I was kind of laughing, thinking like, yeah, we don't provide a ton of information or education. We do, but it's more in the popular education model of like, no, what do you have to say? What do you have to say? How do you feel about that? What's coming up for you? Like, it's fun sometimes.
Most of the time. Then we're not, I think it alleviates the load a little bit for us as facilitators. We're not the all-knowers, and we're not ever trying to be.
Yeah, and one thing we often say in these spaces is we look around as people are navigating tension or conflict together, and literally they're just, for a lot of times, finally putting words to something they've been feeling for weeks, for months, maybe for years within their organization. They're finally verbalizing it. To witness that moment, it feels like, honestly, this sounds weird, but it feels like watching a birth. Like, it's like, wow, this person's finally finding their voice within an organization. I'm watching this in real time. It's so cool. And also we say a lot like, this is the work. This is the work. Like, you think it's going to be the paperwork or the policies or the actions, but no, it's this.
It's you interacting with other people. And reflecting on how you show up in a space.
Getting uncomfortable, realizing you're not going to die in that discomfort.
Politics. That's where we started.
Dude, I just thought about that too. I was about to say, so back to the topic. What were we talking about?
We got, we're passionate about our facilitation style, y'all.
We are. But then, like, politics, it's interesting because politics come up in our training sessions. Depends on your definition of politics. if you believe that politics means like anything related to systems or systemic oppression, then absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that perspective. I don't think that our work is necessarily political because it involves my humanity. So I see it as more personal relationship building work.
Well, yeah, and I guess to me, politics is everything. It's policies and systems that exist that affect our bodies, whether it's gender, race, immigration, like those are affecting human bodies, whether they can access resources, whether they have all the things that they need in order to be a full authentic human person and live fully. Like that is politics. And right now we have a very small group of folks deciding on really big things that are really disconnected and don't understand. I think that's the growing thing too, of just like how big, not only like the race, gender, and class is such a huge thing of like, and what I've had to learn too of like just like the history of the United States and how it was created and why it was created that way. It was for rich elite white men to keep their resources
Bacon's
and
rebellion.
stay in power.
Bacon's rebellion.
And so it's always been about controlling subgroups and allowing power and privilege to run rampant in another group.
It's like, one thing it reminds me of is, I don't know why this came up, but the idea that you can break the rules once you know the system well enough. Like my high school English teacher used to tell me this all the time, because I would try to break the rules of like, I don't need punctuation here. Like, I just want to run on sentence. And she'd be like, just make sure that you understand the system of punctuation and grammar so well that you could do it completely to the rules, and then you break them, because it's more, what's it called? It has more punch versus if you're just not caring. And so I feel like my writing, anytime I post, anytime I've written poetry, has very much been influenced by that I try to learn the rules first so then I could break them intentionally. And it makes me think, now I'm like, what was I saying with this? Damn it.
We both did it today.
This is where we're at, y'all. It was something about like, oops. We have like 3 people watching. It was like something about breaking the rules and the norms, knowing the rules to break them. I lost it. Something about systemic oppression.
Well, you can't necessarily do something differently if you don't understand that it even exists, or how it exists, or why it exists. Is that?
Maybe it was something along those lines.
It's all right.
That's okay. Keep going. So politics and yeah. Oh, the humanization thing. I feel like that's a thing that's just missed a lot, and I feel like, I mean, in working with white folks and working with you included, it's like, I think so many white women especially understand the women front.
Yes.
And then it's like the rest of it has to be brought in terms of humanizing.
Yes.
The race piece, and then the citizenship status piece, and all these, and gender, that's for a lot of us. And I feel like that's what frustrates me sometimes in trying to getting people to understand, like, I'm not doing this work because I think it's a good cause. Like I need to show up at a place and be taken seriously, and that's not happening. So I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that that happens, so that I can live a life that's similar to yours.
And not have to think about 90% of what you experience day in and day out.
Yeah, and I struggle with the idea that maybe that only will happen for the future generations, because I'm like, one, I don't even know if I want to have kids. So when people say, well, we're doing this for our kids, I'm like, for your kids, I guess.
for our nieces and nephews.
That maybe. Too. And it's not that I don't care about the future of kids. It's just, what's going to change in my lifetime? Like, I'm working for things to change in my lifetime. I'm not okay with it not, and they are too. Like,
right.
I think about how many things have changed even in the past decade. around body positivity, around people of color in the media, like that, it is changing.
It is. I think when I think of politics and like the culture that I grew up in and my experience with that, for me again, I've had to really unlearn a whole bunch of shit because it's predominant. I grew up in a white upper middle class neighborhood sphere of folks. And so just again, as I've learned and I've heard people call things out, like my family loved the Clintons, loved Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was amazing. But when now I've learned, like, no, he wasn't. He was the one who did the 3 strikes you're out drug policy that affected Black and Indigenous people of color in a very real way. So there's a lot of color blindness. There's a lot of like what I've had to learn too, just like trust in authority, trust that the folks that do have power are doing all the things that they could and should for us. When they don't, they're not. I mean, I can get by with it because of the identities that I hold, right? Like the policies and things also didn't affect me and my family in the way that they affect other people.
Well, that makes me think of when we talk about 4 eyes of oppression, we talk about ideological oppression, and a lot of these presidents have been creators of some of these clouds of ideologies that people of color have to live with on a day-to-day basis because of it. Yes. Like we think about Reagan and everything he did around cocaine and just like crack cocaine is completely different from like powder cocaine and all these things, and just creating these ideologies that where there's a war against drugs, and then everything that's happened around marijuana and just how it was changed overnight, and all of a sudden it's fine. That ideology still lives today, where Black and brown people are assumed to be stoners if they're somewhat chill. Like and then if we smoke weed, we're criminals and bad news. And if white folks smoke weed nowadays, you're fucking carrying down the street. Like it's just normal.
Yeah, you're just dealing with your kids. That's just what you do. Yeah, I mean, I think in the end, right, race is always in the midst of it. It's just always been, to me, I've learned how it's just been so covert in quote unquote politics. And I think I'm hearing a lot of folks too, like when I hear people say, I don't want to bring up politics, it's more like that Republican versus Democrat thing. And that is, I mean, I think I'm just, in reflection, like my family, I have always been a proud Democrat. What does that mean?
Just outed herself.
I did.
I've been a wishy-washy Democrat.
But again, I don't, like in this moment, I think I'm more and more learning too. Again, I'm just like how elite and classist folks in Washington are, and folks and just, again, nothing has changed since our founding fathers in many ways, of just who is in power and why they're in power. And I don't know, there are still people who are I've seen recently visit like Mount Rushmore, white folks in my life. And I'm just like, I don't understand. Like you're saying you're about racial equity right now and you went to go visit this monument. Like, I'm so confused.
Well, that's what happens when you're in this world for so long. When you're in the world of DEI and racial equity on the daily, when people do I don't know, when anybody even like references Jefferson or anything like the founding fathers even, I'm just like, wait, we're not on the same page, that those are like colonialist, like terrible people.
That's why I've had some really rough conversations with friends around Hamilton. Like, it's really like conflicted.
I know.
Love the music and also what are we
complex.
doing?
So complex. We are at the end of our time today, so thank you for tuning in. If you did, let's get a checkout question. Any come to mind?
Like, what's an intention for you or something you're thinking about to kind of ride out the rest of 2020?
That's a good one. An intention. I want to set the intention of just continually noticing when I feel tight or expansive, or tight or contracted, and when I feel light and expansive, and breathing through the contraction and feeling gratitude in moments of expansion.
Yeah, I think for me, this is why I've encouraged a lot of white folks in my life, and we're going to do this on our 4th session in Uprooted too, of just like to be really grounded and rooted in a why, and that will keep you engaged in the work. And I think I've more and more, even throughout the last few months through the summer, of just realizing what it can and does look like to just to be thinking about race, to be thinking about oppression, to be thinking about my intersecting identities every day, and to navigate that. Like, there's an element of there's what is it that will keep me engaged, and it is getting sleep. It is, just some of that self-care stuff and having some kind of structure. So my intention is, and I've been doing better this week, get up early and kind of doing my things to just find more balance.
Cool. Well, thanks for tuning in, y'all. We'll see you next Wednesday.
When it's long. No, you won't be here.
I won't be here, so you'll see me never. But you might see Maren next Wednesday with a special guest, depending on what she feels.
Okay, we'll see.